What is up? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Vanflip podcast, or welcome to the Vanflip podcast if this is the first time you listen to the podcast. I don't know why I keep saying welcome back every week. But anyway, this week we are on the pod with Jake from Judiciary, the West Texas crossover thrash band. Welcome to the show. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me, dude. How you doing?
Doing well. It's a little early, and I was out late last night. You know, it's the weekend. Admittedly, I was at emo night with the singer of Yellow Card, so it was a little wild time. You know, all the little ladies there going crazy for the acoustic Ocean Avenue set type thing. But I live in Jacksonville, so he's big here. You know what I mean? So what can you do?
Yeah, it happens.
It does happen. So it's a little slow going this morning. But anyway, outside of that, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's me and my girlfriend both just kind of got over a week of being sick. I was actually sick a week before that with a sinus infection, and then right after the sinus infection, I think I caught like a stomach virus or something like that. Oh, awesome. So it's been miserable, but I'm finally on the up and up, and I feel like a human again. So this is perfect timing. So it's a rainy day in San Antonio, Texas, where I live, though. So I'm probably going to stay in most of the day anyway.
I feel you. It's probably also that weather's probably not good for your sinuses and everything like that anyway. But we got a little overcast situation here in Jacksonville as well, so I feel that.
Yeah.
You guys just dropped a new album, although this podcast will come out probably like in a month from now, so just fair warning. But you guys just dropped a new album last week, Flesh and Blood. So how do you feel about it?
I feel great, man. I feel like the response has been kind of overwhelming. I was truthfully like a little bit, as everybody is when they release new music. They're like, I was kind of worried. It's like, what if I believe in the music so much, but it's like, what if this sucks and I just don't know, you know?
Yeah, you're too close to it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that people like it. It was a little bit of a sound shift for us, but I think that people received it well, and I'm happy. I'm super happy with how everything turned out, the whole package of the record from front to back. So yeah, I'm just glad it's out in the world, because it was a whole process getting that thing out. So.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned like a little bit of a sound change. Do you want to go and elaborate on that a little bit from obviously the last record to this new record?
Yeah, so basically, since we started the band back in 2013, like we, our mantra has always just been like, do cool shit because we like to do cool shit.
Yeah.
Do stuff that you like, and things will come to you, essentially. And basically, our trajectory of the band has been like progressively more metal throughout our discography, because our demo was just straight up hardcore.
Yeah.
Axis of Equality sounds like we were just listening to a bunch of thrash, and then Surface Noise sounds like we were kind of in the middle of like metal crossover like kind of thing, but we were listening to a lot of Master Killer at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with this one, it was like we kind of took a step back and we're just like, okay, so we don't want to make Surface Noise Part 2. We've already done, because the Axis of Equality as an EP was like, that's a crossover EP, like through and through. We didn't feel like another, like going back to crossover, we didn't feel like that would be a natural progression. It almost felt like it would be a weird step, not even back, but to the side. And so we thought, like, how can we kind of expand what we can do here? And what we kind of landed on was like, let's just kind of self-reflect on like what we listen to, overarching, like within guitar music. What we found is that we listen to, a mix of stuff like death metal, some black metal, but a bunch of like early 2000s and late 90s metal kept popping up into our brains. I mean, we kind of wear like early Machine Head stuff on our sleeves, and like, so that was a big one. And then like God Hates Us All kept on like popping up into our mind. And so it was like, okay, like how do we take that and apply it to Judiciary? And what we landed on is like, if we swing wide with this genre stuff, like if you put my voice over it, it's still gonna sound like Judiciary, and people are still gonna say it sounds like a hardcore band. even if we're trying so hard to write like a purely metal song or whatever. So that's kind of what we like landed on as what we should do, because that felt like a natural progression, and it felt like it would still feel like us and be authentic and be something that like we like as like music fans. And like I think we pulled that off in my mind, because it's like it feels like all five of us kind of had our hands really deep in this, and it feels like the natural progression of where we should have gone anyway. So yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking just because it is a little bit different, but I think it paid off.
Yeah, I want to agree with you on the reception part, because a lot of what I hear around, and you know, obviously we reviewed the record a couple weeks ago. Colin was a big fan of it, although he did make a joke to me, because I asked him, you know, hey, what do you want to, if you had anything to ask, you know, Judiciary, what would you want me to ask them? And the one thing he did say was, why don't they sound like All Out War again or anymore? But clearly you kind of you know, explained it a little bit, but that my question for that is like, is that like a natural progression? Obviously, because you were younger when you were in 2013. That's almost 10 years ago. So I don't know how old you are, but you know, you made a straight up demo, hardcore band, you know, a hardcore demo, and then you just kind of progressed. Obviously, your palette changed with your probably musical interests and intake. Like you were saying, you've been listening to a lot of other influences and other metal influences. So it's been pretty cool. But again, I think a lot of people have been talking about the record in a positive manner. So, you know, fears be gone.
Yeah, well, and like the All Out War is still there. Like I'm listening to, like, For Those Who Are Crucified weekly. Like, Condemned to Suffer. Are you kidding me? Like, we have to take notes from them.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, like the hardcore stuff is definitely still there. Like when I say like we're
I agree.
Listening to like we're still hardcore kids at heart. Like no matter, we can't fucking help ourselves but to like put stuff like that in there.
Yeah.
And so like I think that's like a bunch of people's questions, is like, especially like the people who really like the more crossover stuff that we do. They're like, damn, why'd you kind of step away from that? But like it didn't feel right. That's the main reason.
That's a good way to explain. Why. How do you feel about All Out War's new record? Because they just dropped one.
I love it.
Yeah, a couple months ago or weeks ago or something.
I love it, man. They swing wide too.
Yeah.
Like they on that new record, they're going like, they have so much black metal stuff in that new record that's like, and like Mike Score's voice is like unbelievable, man. It's crazy that they've been a band since to answer your question, I'm 27.
Okay.
I think For Those Who Crucified came out in 95. They've been a band since I've been alive.
Yeah.
And they're still putting out crazy good records. It's insane.
Yeah. So you were 17 when the demo came out. So that's and again, that kind of explains too why you guys made more of a hardcore record. No offense to anybody in the band, because you also have members that are in other bands. Israel's still in Gate Creeper, right? Yeah. So, you have other members in other bands, but obviously at a younger age, you're not, and I don't know if everyone's the same age as you, obviously, but at younger ages, you're not as good of a player or as good as a vocalist or as good as a drummer in that time frame. So, and no offense, because I love hardcore. I'm on a big hardcore kick in my later stage in life anyway. I prefer it more to metal, unfortunately. But it's also a little easier to write than, metal. It's not as noodly, doesn't have as many different guitar parts and all this stuff. But it definitely works. So that makes sense as you got older. There's a progression in not only your style but your playing and your skill level.
Yeah, there was a joke that Israel made a couple weeks ago, and he was just like, for like a couple, I think on Surface Noise, a couple people made comments that like Israel and Jimmy, or like Jimmy didn't write on the last record, but Israel didn't show off enough on the last record, and he was like, people just wanted me to play guitar, so on this record, me and Jimmy played guitar.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's exactly what they did.
I don't like to bring up the pandemic a lot anymore because we're past that, right? But there hasn't really been a lot from you guys, and I could be wrong, but we haven't really posted a lot or heard a lot about you guys up until this new record kind of press movement. So you guys had Surface Noise in 2019. Then obviously you had the pandemic come like within the year or a little close to a year after that. But you guys also have only played like a handful of shows, it sounds like, after I researched it a little bit in the last, year or so. So what's been going on in the time between, the last record, COVID, and this album release?
So that was just kind of a true product of the pandemic. Because, like, our original plan was... So we got off of our last tour before the pandemic. It was the Gatecreeper Exhumed Necrot tour. We did that it ended in December, and then we had FYA Fest, LDB Fest, and then a show in San Antonio, like in February. So we were like, okay, we'll do... That was in 2020. And then we had another fest in April. It was like what was supposed to be United Blood. And... We were like, okay, we'll do these. We'll start writing in March, and then after United Blood, we don't have another tour until August. So we were like, oh, we can like hunker down, and Jimmy will fly down. We'll write knock this record out within like 6 months or something like that. And then March of 2020 hit, and it was like, oh shit, we can't see each other right now, because like obviously nobody had any education of what was going on. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Everything was shut down. So like we found ourselves kind of just sitting with our hands up, going like, okay, how do we maneuver this? So basically, it was a long 2020 March through the end of 2020 and like the beginning of 2021 was literally just us trying to get our bearings, because the only person in our band, or the only people in our band that knew how to use recording equipment so that way we could send stuff back and forth were our bassist Kyle and our guitarist Jimmy. Okay. So we had to buy software and equipment for Austin to program drums, and Israel. We bought Israel like a computer and an interface and a whole setup, and he had to learn like how to record his own guitar parts and program drums so we could send our ideas back and forth. And then like once things started loosening up towards the end of 2020, we got Jimmy down to Texas a couple of times, and because he lives in Milwaukee, so like it's pretty crazy. So we got him down a couple of times and fleshed out our ideas in person, because like our ideas just aren't complete until we get in the same room, essentially.
Yeah, I get it.
So I believe we had it mostly written out like in March of 2021, and then we went and demoed with our friend Matt in May of 2021, and then it was we rewrote some stuff with Matt, and then immediately after we demoed, we were like, okay, we're ready to go. So we booked with Arthur, and Arthur is a busy man now. Like, he is very hard to schedule with. So coordinating our schedules, which also included Israel's busy Gatecreeper schedule, because that's his full-time job now.
Yeah.
Like, we had to coordinate Arthur and Israel's schedules and all of our life schedules together, and that ended up working out in September of 2021. So then we recorded with Arthur, schedule a mix with Will Putney, and then the time we had allotted got taken out because of a flood that happened in New Jersey. That was really bad.
Wow, yeah.
And so then after he gets his stuff in order, our record is still unmixed, and he has Unearth in the studio for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So it took a while, but just because he didn't have the time. That was kind of the story. Was we were just kind of like, it was a thing of like, hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Get it done and then wait.
Yeah.
Essentially, and like that carried over into a few other things, and then you bring in like the massive delays with like record manufacturing and stuff like that everybody was feeling and experiencing. So like that put a damper on things, and then we had to get art done, we had to get this done, we had to get that done. So it just turned into this long, arduous process. And during that process, like with shows, it was like, okay, how do we don't want to tour because we don't have a new record. Like, we're running on fumes off this thing already. So it's like, let's play as many one-off shows as we can, keep ourselves alive, and then once we get this new record out, people will kind of like come back and understand. So which was a struggle. It felt like we were sitting on our hands the whole time. Yeah. But I think that like that long, arduous process helped us kind of fine-tune and get something out that we like really, really like love and are proud of.
Yeah.
So it's a pain in the ass, but we got it done.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to take the lumps and keep moving, you know. But and again, you know, I think it worked out because, you know, you release it at a time where not so many things were obviously being released at the same time. You know, March is usually like a slower month. You know, if you waited a little longer or whatnot, the summer is a little more busy. And then you had last year, you had, you know, the fall or whatever, had a couple bangers come out. So it kind of helps you stand out a little bit too. But obviously you don't really necessarily know what other, I mean, you have an idea probably, but you don't necessarily know exactly what's coming out when you're planning like your schedule for everything. So, you know, that's also kind of a fingers crossed, grin and bear it type situation, because you don't want to compete with other bands or other bigger bands that can foreshadow you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And like certain stuff in the world can like take out your record too. I did Hard Lore with Colin and
I love that podcast, man.
And they're the fucking best. Yeah. And Colin mentioned that Candy's new record came out on the same day that like the Supreme Court was like banning abortions, or they announced it on the same day.
So all the attention just shifts.
So all the attention went there, rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And then the day it came out was the day that passed.
Double fucked.
So
yeah.
So they just got double fucked by the government, and that record's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like it just sucks that it happens sometimes.
Yeah. Is it tough having, you know, Israel Moonlight in both bands? Because, you know, obviously, no offense to any band or whatever, but Gatecreeper is a bigger, more known band, and they do seem to tour a lot more too. So is it tough for you guys to, because I mean, I know you guys you've had other projects as well, you know, you and the other guys outside of Israel have had other projects and stuff, but how difficult is it to kind of just like juggle, just like, I mean, I know you all have personal lives like you were saying and personal schedules, but his may seem to be like more busy because he is part of this bigger unit, you know, Gatecreeper.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, but he is willing to do whatever it takes to make it work for us.
Yeah, and
truthfully, like he's fucking awesome, man. Like it's worth having him there, and like we've built like. We have a bunch of friends and a good group of people around us that it's like we can plug and play. Like if he's got to do something for Gatecreeper, we can have somebody that we can bring in to help us out. And so like that's what makes it worth us for us to in. And like on a personal level, that guy's been my best friend since I was a teenager. Like it's cool. It's so he's in fucking Australia right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like why you're not doing something right now, because you know they're doing the Australian tour.
Yeah, he's posting a picture holding a koala. Like I'm happy for my friend. Mm-hmm. Like he so like it's tough at times because sometimes we have to kind of like work around our schedule because like just like me, Austin, and Jimmy and Kyle have jobs. Like Gatecreeper is his full-time job, so we have to like. It would be unfair to him for us to hold that against him, and like you know we make do. Like it works out that way, and when he can do stuff with us, he does. So it works out. Plus, I fucking love Gatecreeper. Like,
yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
If there's one band that like it's like we like of course go do it with them.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
We had Chase on the podcast. You know, a year or two ago, so we're big fans of Gatecreeper as well. But, what was I going to ask you? I was just asking, just had something in my head, but then we started talking about that. But whatever. What kind of jobs do you guys have outside of Judiciary? If you want to talk about it, obviously.
Yeah, I won't go into like employers or anything like that, but I work I work a sales job, like an industrial sales job, and then Austin does like copywriting. We both went to Texas Tech, and we had a bunch of classes together in the media and communications building. So
is that how you guys met, or did you guys just knew each other before that?
Oh yeah, me and him have known each other since kindergarten.
Long time, bud.
Yeah, we played t-ball together. We rode the same bus together. He's my life partner, even though he's married.
Yeah.
We've known each other since we were kids, and like we've just been best friends forever. So we went to high school together. We lived together for years. We've toured together. I spent more time with him than I think my own flesh and blood. No pun intended.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand that. Not see it, understand it.
But yeah, so he does like a copywriting job, and then Jimmy's a barber.
That seems to be a thing in the scene. A lot of barbers, a lot of hair, a lot of people doing hair.
He's new to the barber thing. He started that over COVID because he was a bartender before, and then no people to serve. Yeah, so he kind of had to shift, and he loves it. So, and then Kyle works within corporate America. He does kind of like a niche specialized thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's and then Israel's just a full-time rocker.
Yeah, that's cool for him, though, obviously diversifying his income streams, so he can just do music full-time because he's got, that project, which is, like you said, full-time, and then he's got your thing, Judiciary. It's not, I don't want to say it's not full-time, but obviously, like, who knows, because now you have a new record and a new thing out, and things could change, and he might have 2 full-time jobs he has to juggle,
Yeah.
What is it about Texas that has these, like, heavy, fast-paced bands? Like, we had Power Trip, obviously. We just had I Am on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Then you have Gate Creeper, and you have all those other bands that are just like really killing it out of Texas. What is it about it? Is it just because it's like there's a lot of room, a lot of sand, and a lot of heat, or and everyone's pissed, or what?
It's just ingrained in the DNA, especially like bands that will come from Texas hardcore, which is a lot of the bands that have broke through like the ether of like the heavy music scene. Like you take into account like Frozen Soul, Creeping Death, Scourge. Now they just came out with a new record.
Yeah, that's a banger too.
Power Trip, obviously. We all came from the Texas hardcore scene. And a bunch of that is just due to like the pioneers of the early 2000s. Like there would be, speaking to us, there would be no Power Trip without Iron Age. There would be no Judiciary without Power Trip. So everything leads back into Iron Age and like Far From Breaking and those bands from that time. And people always like to like. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme. It's like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Iron Age is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are bitter and Power Trip.
Oh yeah.
And like it's true. It's more true than ever, especially of like bands of my generation of like us, Creeping Death, I Am, Frozen Soul, Scourge. Like we all fucking take notes from them, and that's why.
Yeah.
It's just the and then it even like goes into offshoot bands like Hatred Surge, Mammoth Grinder, and everything like that. Like when I started traveling, because I'm from Lubbock, it's like 6 hours away.
Yeah.
From any of the big cities. It might as well be a different state.
Everything in Texas is 6 hours away, man. That place is so fucking huge. Driving through that thing is a pain in the ass.
Dude, when we first started going out of town, it was kind of hard for us because people didn't know who the fuck we were because no other band had come from Lubbock. So they were like, they kind of were like unsure about us at first. But like, yeah, like when I first started going to out of town shows, like I was blown away by like those type of like metal leaning bands, and it's infectious. So that's why all of these other bands take notes and they just follow along. That's why there's a Texas sound. The second you hear like anything metal, you're like, oh yeah, makes sense.
So 17-year-old you, how do you start getting into Judiciary? Like what prompted you? Was it I mean, obviously Power Trip is a big influence and Iron Age and stuff like that, but like what actually made you say, fuck it, I want to do that too?
So I started getting into hardcore probably like a year and a half before, right around when I was 16. Because like I said, the population of Lubbock is like 250,000 people. And that is when the school is in session. The school employs and houses.
Was it Texas A&M?
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Yeah. And so the school houses and supports like 40, 50,000 people. So during the summer, it drops down to about 200,000. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty medium to smallish sized city for what it is. And that meaning we don't have that many people to go to a hardcore show. I swear to God, when I started going to hardcore shows, I started booking hardcore shows when I was 17. And the same 10 to 15 people that would go to every show have been going to every show since I was like starting to go to new shows till now.
Dedication.
Like, it's just it's a lot. It's hard to get new people in there just because it's so different from like a big city. There's just not enough people going around.
You would think, though. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you would think with like a population with like a young population just coming and going so frequently from that, you know, like there'd be more bands or there'd be more attendance at that stuff. Because I mean, obviously, like I'm not saying everybody from that 40,000, you know, plus student base would be into this, but you would think that even a percentage of it, like a small percentage, would be in it, and they'd want to make bands and they'd want to attend shows, which I'm sure they do, but you know what I mean, it doesn't sound like it's really prevalent.
We would get like a couple every year, like Reese from Creeping Death. That's how we met them. They went to Texas Tech for like a year, and that's how we met Reese. And then my best friend Amber, who lives in Dallas, she came to Texas Tech. That's how we met her. So that was like another one of the books. We were stoked about that. and then I had another friend named Ryan who came from El Paso. So it was like we would get one every you know. But the thing to keep in mind about Texas Tech is like it's not a like I think that like it's not a liberal arts school. It's an agricultural and engineering
it's a tech school. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the culture is different, and like honestly, like if I lived in another place and I was like, if I lived in like Dallas or San Antonio or Austin or Houston, I'd be like, I'm moving to Lubbock.
Yeah.
I could go to UT Austin and move to Austin, or like I could go to UT Dallas and move to Dallas, or I could go to College Station and be like 2 hours away from my family. Yeah. So it's like that's I think that's why like a bunch of like the culture's just not there for it. And like the hometown people, it's a big farm and agriculture city. Like West Texas exports most of the world's cotton. Like my grandpa was a cotton farmer, so it's like country music is king. If you're if you're a country band in Lubbock, oh my god,
killing it.
Oh, you're buying a 15,000 square foot house for $200,000 and you're chilling in Lubbock, Texas.
So what scenes are good around? I mean, obviously there's the big cities, but you just mentioned like College Station and Austin. With those are other cities with big schools like Texas A&M and Texas, obviously University, which I've been to both of those. I think we drove through Lubbock, but years and years and years ago, I did this thing where we were going around the country in a bus that was like wrapped, and we were trying to like change the BCS to a playoff system. Again, this was many years ago. It's currently a playoff system, obviously, but and I'm not going to say that we were the movement for that, but we stopped in like all the like Division I cities and like had these little things, and so that's why I've been to like Austin and College Station and all these little college towns that have these big schools in them. So yeah. What is it about, do you guys like, there's certain states that just pop, and it seems like Texas is popping now too. You know, like certain states just kind of kill it at a certain time, like Florida and like, I don't want to say New York, but like the Northeast. So certain pockets have these like really big, you know, collective movements going on, and it seems like a lot of Texas is getting a lot of shine.
Because it's fucking sick, man. I was just like, I think it's just because Texas is kind of isolated down here. So, like, we kind of, even though Texas is a huge scene that's popping, there's still kind of a mentality of, like, Texas supports Texas overall.
Mm-hmm.
There's no disputing that. If you're from Texas and you're good, you will get support, especially within Texas hardcore. But I think that for bands that want to go outward and go across the country and overseas and everything like that, there's a mentality of, like, you have to make people fucking care about it. Like, and I think that some, especially us, like, being from Lubbock, like, being isolated in Texas is one thing. Being isolated in Lubbock is just another extra layer on top of that. So, like, you have to make people fucking care, and I think that that's what it is. It's just, like, these bands are hungry. They've been taking good notes, like I said, from the people who built the shit, like Iron Age, Bitter End, and Power Trip, and they just want to fucking do it. That's all it comes down to, and I think that's just, the combination of that makes it foster good things.
So when you were starting to do shows and booking shows and starting to attend shows, did you have to travel a lot outside of Lubbock to, and how far would like, what's the closest? Was it College Station? Was it, a different city around you that you'd have to travel to? So
the closest cities to us are Amarillo, which is 2 hours north, and then Midland/Odessa, which is 2 hours south.
Yeah.
When we first started as a band, Midland and Odessa had, like, a decent DIY scene. They had this DIY venue called the Pine Box.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember, like, shows would be listed, like Midland and Odessa would be always on tour packages back in the day. So I remember that. Yeah.
So, like, when we first started, that was kind of when the Pine Box was ending. I was going to Pine Box shows before that. So we would drive 2 hours, which is not really much.
Like 2 hours there and 2 hours back, or just 2 hours in general total time? 4 hours total
2 hours.
time.
2 hours there, 2 hours back.
Oh, fuck.
4 hours, dedication. 4 hours total through a bunch of oil fields. That's the most boring drive ever. So, yeah, we played a couple of shows there. Amarillo, kind of, their scene had a good thing going before we were a band. They had this band called Cannonball that was, doing a lot of great things, and then they ended, and I think that a bunch of people hopped off after that, which, like, they have the same problem Lubbock does. So does Midland and Odessa. There's just not that many people hanging around.
Yeah.
Then it was like, okay, we gotta get out of here. The first show we played outside of Lubbock was in San Antonio, where I live now. Favorite place to play. Like, it's always good. And you'll hear a lot of bands say, like, every time they go to San Antonio, it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. We met the guys from Afflictive Nature and Hardside at a show they played in Amarillo. We drove 2 hours to go see Afflictive Nature and Hardside, drove 2 hours back home, met them at the show, and they booked us a show in San Antonio for a couple months away.
Tight.
Which was really cool of them. And so we started going to San Antonio, and there was some shows where we would drive 6 hours to San Antonio, play the show, and then drive back overnight 6 hours.
Yeah.
And
young bucks could do that.
Yeah, we had to.
Yeah.
It was like, we can skip a night of sleep and go to work the next day. Like, we can. It's worth it. We're getting to play cool shows.
Yeah.
And then we did, like, it took us a while to be able to play Dallas, just because of, like I said, people didn't really know us at the time, and, like, they thought that we weren't, we were there for something that they didn't trust us, essentially. And it was like, I got it. All those bridges are mended now.
How long did it take to grow like that? Like, how long did it take you guys from, like, 2013, 2014 to play in, like, those bigger cities? Like, how much work and how much time was put into that?
We were playing San Antonio in 2014, so it didn't take very long for them. Dallas, we didn't get to play until 2016 or 17. And that was just because the DIY scene didn't want anything to do with us.
And why
like
would
I
that
said,
be?
like,
Do you have a reason why that was, or
I think they just thought we were dorks, which is like fair. Like,
keeping got it? I got it.
yeah, but like I said, all those bridges are mended now,
Right.
And it's like it's all good. But like yeah, so like it took us a while to get to Dallas. But like once we started going to Dallas, we did the same thing. We would drive 6 hours, play Dallas, drive back. We played this fest in Houston called Fallcore, which is no longer. Rest in peace, because that fest was awesome. And we drove 9 hours to Houston, drove 9 hours back. We just made it work, and we've always just tried to make it work as much as we can. I think the biggest make it work we've ever done was I was still in college at the time, and we got invited to play for the Children Fest in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And Cruel Hand and who was it? Cruel Hand, Purgatory, Lifeless, I think. They invited us to play like 3 shows, like Arizona, LA, Bay Area, and I had a final on Monday, and so I was like, the final was at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So I was like, okay, so if we leave the Bay Area, California,
Good Lord, yeah.
at this time,
You're talking about San Francisco, Oakland, right? That Bay, yeah. Okay, just making sure.
I was very ill-advised. Like, if you're it's so stupid of me to do, but it was like, oh yeah, I can make it. We drove 26 hours from the Bay back to Lubbock just so I could make my final. I got back home. I didn't sleep. I studied for like 4 or 5 hours. Took the final. Slept for 16 hours straight. And then I woke up and saw that I got a B.
Oh, nice. So, I was going to ask, yeah, how did it go? What was the final for, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what type of final was it? Or the subject?
Oh, I want to say I went to school for public relations. I want to say it was like a PR theory class, so it was like really wordy and stuff like that. Like there was a bunch of like textbook definitions that I needed to like memorize. So like it was kind of hefty, but I made it work.
I gotcha. That was my other question, because you said your grandfather had like, you know, agricultural background with the cotton thing, and you went to a tech school, so I was curious as to what you went to school for, but you obviously said the PR situation or the public relations thing, and I was curious if you had any kind of like, if you went to school for the like agricultural type things, but clearly you went to the tech school for the public relations stuff.
Yeah, I was never a ag guy. My grandfather passed before, or he passed right after I was born, I believe. Okay. So I didn't really know him, but yeah, he ran the cotton farm, and my mom and my dad and all of my family always tell me stories about working on the cotton farm and shit like that. So yeah, never was a ag guy.
What got you into the PR situation? Was it just because you were booking shows and just networking and stuff like that when you were younger, or like what drew you to that?
It felt like something I could be good at. Was the main thing. I think that it was like, it's a media related thing. It was a broad thing, and I could apply it to what my interests were, which was like music and everything like that. So it kind of worked out in a way. I learned a lot. That's actually, I do like freelance graphic design on the side. I do like shirt designs and album covers and stuff like that. I learned that while I was in college. I had a really cool professor, and she basically, the whole class was like, it was an elective class called PR design and practice, and it was basically just teaching you how to make like promotional stuff, like flyers and pamphlets and brochures and everything like that
for like businesses and stuff like that. And you're doing it for fucking shows and bands instead. It's completely different a little bit.
Well, so that was the funny thing, was like, she took a liking to me because I think I was the only one in the class that was like genuinely interested in like learning the stuff. A bunch of people were just trying to get a credit, and so I asked her, because I told her about Judiciary, and I was like, hey, my band has like some stuff coming up, like could I, like whatever projects we have, could I base it around like my band? And she was like, oh yeah, go for it. And because a bunch of other kids, like with their projects, they would do it with like based around like their fraternity, make like stuff for like a hypothetical clothing brand or something like that. And
or
I
like
was
a
just
different
doing it.
brand or something like that, like a bigger brand that's already kind of known or whatnot.
There was a tour flyer. I think it was the same semester we did For the Children, actually, which is funny. I made the tour flyer for a project in my class, and I got an A on it, so
Nice.
it worked out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you say you have a sales job now. Do you want to do stuff in that field, like PR and stuff like that, or do you handle like PR stuff? Or obviously, you said you do side work with design and everything like that, but do you do anything in like actual PR, or do you just focus on the design stuff?
I don't, but I'm very, very interested. I've thought about doing. I don't know if I ever will, just because like it's just a thought in my brain. But I'd be really, really interested into, doing maybe some like publicist work, some writing work, or anything like that. Just because like I learned a lot during my college time, and like I'm a decent writer, so like I'd be interested.
And you have like the in for that. You have a PR publicist person, so you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like you, it might be cool to like handle the band stuff. Like again through like a company, not just you
Yeah.
and the band. Like DI. Well, you could do it that way too, but probably be better to use like a mailing list from an actual company and stuff like that, or a bigger publicist. But yeah, I mean, you've ever thought about moonlighting like that too?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be down. I think it's just mainly like I know I have connections. It's just I always get in my head when starting something new that it's just like deep in my head. I know how to go about that, but I get in my head and I say I don't even know where to start. Like I don't know how to go about that.
It does. It is kind of daunting when just for anything like writing a new album, trying to do anything with the band, or do anything outside of your normal day-to-day life, like trying to a new job per se, right? Like those are very big, tough decisions, and that's why a lot of people stay where they're at too. A lot of people get in their head and their way, and they just stay where they're at and they're complacent, which works for some people. But also they don't realize that they could improve the quality of life and their just overall morale by switching up things, because you don't necessarily realize like some negativity is coming from your job and some negativity is coming from like you wanting to do all these things, but again being too confused or too scared to where do I start or how do I start. So
yeah, well, and I think it stems from like just the free time that I have at the moment, like between having a full-time job and like doing, especially the past, like leading up to the rollout of this record. Fuck, man, like we were obsessing over everything, so it was like it was consuming my brain at all times. Like I kind of like shoved off graphic design for a while, just because I was just like, if I like the creative headspace I need for like how obsessive I am over this record. I don't know if like I have the bandwidth to shovel that out to other people right now. So I'll probably get back on the horse soon, and who knows, maybe I'll get on the PR horse soon, because I've been thinking about it heavily, especially like dealing with the rollout to this record. Our publicist has done a great job, and like with what we've been doing so far, but it's definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, and again, like you have the interest. I mean, you have the connections for that, obviously. You work in that realm a little bit. What would you be doing? What's? Sorry, but I'll get back to that question. What is? How's touring difficult? Is touring difficult for you guys in your jobs and stuff like that? Like when you do actually have to book tours, or have you not had to have that conversation with your current employer?
So we haven't had anything like too heavy come our way.
And again, if I should probably preface, this comes out in a month, so like if next week you guys are announcing some big tour or whatever, you can talk about it on here. It's not going to come out, and we won't say anything prior.
No, we have some stuff in the works, but like nothing's going to be announced by the time this comes out, I believe. But like we haven't run into anything too heavy. Like we haven't had to leave for like a month since, like, I think the most we've left is like 2 weeks here and there. And like that was for like a Europe tour. We had enough PTO like between all of us to like cover that and everything, so that wasn't even a conversation. The jobs that we do have can be worked remote, so
that was going to
now
be one of my questions.
my job is one of those things where it's like they would prefer you not work at remote,
I feel that.
but
I've
like
gotten that. Yeah.
but I can, and I'm like I started the job in the middle of the pandemic. Like I can work at remote and do great.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. So like the remote situation helps us, and I'm currently trying to like find like something fully like solid remote within my company. Because I work for a great company, and I think that I can excel there. But I think that if I got the fully remote thing, then that just takes a whole thing off my plate. Austin's been doing remote work since we've been touring heavy. Like when we toured pretty heavy in 2019, and he was working from the road the whole time. He was working for like an agency at the time, and he would just sit passenger seat in the van and just write all day. And it was good for him. Like he was exhausted by the end of the tour, obviously, but like it was worth it because he had money coming in the whole time, and he was secure, and he went back to a job. So during that time, I was just working odd jobs. I was doing like Uber driving. I was doing like food delivery, which is a whole fucking thing. But, yeah.
I've done that here or there, in the past decade or so, whenever that first started. So yeah, I've done that just to see what it was like. But it doesn't get fun, and then I'm making like $2 an hour almost. So. But what is the favorite? What's the favorite part of writing? Like, is it? Again, you have your interest, but for the band, like, do you guys like writing riffs, breakdowns, or swinging wide? Like, what's the favorite of your guys' writing situation?
I think it depends on the instance, because it's like the second you hear that, like. I think one of my favorite moments within writing is when Israel or Jimmy is just noodling on a guitar, and then they're just like, I don't know, man, and like they just do something, and in the middle of all this bullshit, you just hear the coolest thing you've ever fucking heard. Like it's like the meme of Leo on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he's like sitting on the couch, he's like,
yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, follow that. So like I love when that happens. On this last record, we did like some writing in the studio, especially like regarding solos and everything like that. Arthur kind of like helped shape a few of the songs pretty heavy in the studio. I like that a lot, because I feel like once it's like mostly fleshed out and you don't have to worry about like the bones of the song, and you're just adding, like if you got a sandwich and you're just adding more mustard on top, I'm cool with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so
you should have said hot sauce for Texas. You should have said hot sauce instead of mustard.
I'm down with both, man.
I feel you.
Yeah.
We brought up money a little bit ago, and one of the things I like to tap into on these podcasts is that it's very because some people from the fan side of things, they'll see a band on stage, and they'll see a band touring, and they'll see a band put a record out on a label, like this, that, or the other, and they might assume that they're signed, they're killing it, they're making money, and all this other stuff, and some bands are, respectfully, but a lot of these bands in our little world, they come home in the red sometimes. They obviously sleep in the van for most of the summer or most of the tours. So what's the hardest part when it comes to like money and making money outside of your jobs and stuff like that? Because obviously you all have jobs that you can support yourself with, but while on the road or while doing stuff specifically for the band, like how tough is it?
It's fucking tough, now more than ever.
Yeah.
Like everything costs more, and like I think that's what a lot of people on like the other side don't understand is like, say a band, let's take like a band like Speed, for example. They come over from Australia. Obviously, they're a special circumstance because they're really hot right now.
Yeah.
And
the Australian shows are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Right now, currently.
They're an awesome band. But like, you take a band like Speed, just for them to get here to the United States, that takes like $7,000.
It may even be more than that, because they have to get visas, and then they're fucking plane tickets, and if they're bringing if they're bringing their equipment over, you know what I mean? That's a whole nother.
Yeah,
thing. Might be even 20 grand.
Yeah, that's the thing is like people don't factor in all those factors, and then they see like, oh, so Speed comes over, they spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to get over here. They are here. Now it's like, okay, if not all, which happens a lot, if not all of our guarantees cover all of our costs, we have to sell merch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you sell merch. You have a merch bill attached to that. It costs money to manufacture that, which everybody knows. But like now that merch is costs more than you can imagine. And then like some bands especially if they're playing like Live Nation venues or stuff like that, they run into taxes. Like you have to do it right. Essentially, you have to fill out tax forms. You have to everything's tracked. Like, and then you're paying, if you're on tour, you're paying for gas and like all these ancillary costs. And then these guys have to eat. It's like, and I think that especially in like underground music, it's almost like taboo for like the bands to be like making money.
Yeah.
Which is like, I wish the culture wasn't like that because it's just like,
I think a lot of people may think like if they're making money, they're not as underground, or
they're not like they're DIY for the wrong reasons, or something like that.
Like, and there's a famous video I fucking see all the time on TikTok or Twitter, or not TikTok, Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. It's like this, I can't remember the exact punk band, maybe the Casualties or something like that, but they're playing some show in like Brazil or South America somewhere, and some kid gets on stage and he's telling everybody like how much they've sold out, and they're letting him do this, like the band's letting him do this, but then he explains, and it's all in Spanish, so you have to read the subtitles, but he explains that there's like you're saying, there's costs and stuff like that. So like that's why I like to bring this topic up, because it's not like the band selling out or doing it for the wrong reasons. They're doing it for the right reasons. But like if you as the fan or the audience of heavy music or underground music want this particular thing to continue, you have to be okay with bands at least covering their expenses and then some, because like the and then some allows them to continue working on the art and working on everything else when they're not touring and that stuff full time. So it's one of these weird gatekeeper fucking situations where, and then, you may get too big and then people may not like you because you're too big. Like, Knock Loose is so big now. Like, that's like a giant band where 5 years ago they were just an underground band killing it, and then they had the Blue album come out and fucking blew them up, and now they're playing with Slipknot and headlining festivals. Yeah,
well, and like something to keep in mind is, okay, a lot of the showgoers work normal 9-to-5 jobs where, like, let's say John and Jane Doe are making $50,000 a year apiece, and they live a pretty normal life. They can rent their apartment. They can, do X, Y, Z. There's bands that have been doing this way longer than I have, that do touring, sleep in their van every night, eat shit for 6 weeks at a time just so they can come home and live the John and Jane Doe life. Just so they can come home, have enough money to live the John and Jane Doe life, and then they go back out for 6 weeks. So they're getting the same life that some of these people like. I feel like some people would point the finger, like John and Jane Doe would point the finger at these musicians and say, like, you're making too much money. Why are you doing this? And it's like, I'm getting just as much as you, while not being able to use it as much and not getting the benefits that you do, like insurance and everything like that. Yeah. So it's like the best thing you can do is just like support these fucking bands, man. Especially if you like them. Like, who cares? Like, why let your favorite band get rich. Yeah. Let them be able to
No one's getting rich. No one's getting rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let them be able to buy a car that works. Like,
yeah.
Let them
pay
be
their
able
rent.
to
just pay their rent and not have to worry about shit. Basic necessities.
Yeah, exactly. And like so many bands, like along that same token that I said, like sleep in their van every night just so they can come home and like live a normal life. There's a lot of bands that have again been doing it longer than I have that follow that same thing, and they're also working other jobs.
Yeah, and
just so that they can have a normal life.
And some bands just, like you said, you've lived with members of your band. Some bands just live together too for long periods of time because it's cheaper on rent. They all are working towards the same common goal. Instead of having a dual income, you may have like 3, 4, 5, 6 people living in a house pulling, paying bills. But to piggyback off of like the John and Jane fucking dual income fucking thing, I've had conversations off the record with people that are in multiple bands at a time, multiple bands that everyone probably knows, right? And they go home and they make like $30,000-$40,000 a year, and that's full time. And that's these people, they don't mind it because they enjoy the lifestyle. Like they're about it, right? Like they're about the scene, and they're in these bands. They're about what it is, and they've done it for so long, like 20 plus years, And again, these bands are like bands most people know, but they don't necessarily get, and a lot of that is like people have retirement, they pay into a pension, they do all this stuff, but like I constantly think about what will happen to these bands that are fine living, on these lower monetary salaries, if you want to call it, quote unquote, but hopefully they're putting away or, building a house somewhere or something like that. So when you can't tour, or something happens in general, right? Like you aren't able to bring in that income. I just hope they're planning for in advance. But again, that we just need to, I don't want to say spend more money, but, No,
I mean, that's quite literally the only solution. Like spend the money and support these artists, because like a lot of this shit cannot happen without like this network of support.
Yeah. Like, especially with music being so accessible and free, basically, like you can stream the Judiciary record the day it's out at 12 o'clock at night and then full. It used to be like you'd have to wait for maybe a couple days or a week or something like that to someone burn it or rip it off, or if like a promo got leaked, you'd have to like find it on the internet. And even then, the people that were able to do that were that group of people was way smaller than the people that had no idea how to get like download MP3s or something like that. Whereas now you have Spotify, Apple, or Tidal, or any kind of streaming service, anybody can just listen to your stuff right off rip.
Yeah, and like you factor in like as the years go by, streams of income will be getting removed from artists, like even more than they already are. Like before streaming, physical album sales, like I bet, I don't know numbers, I don't know how much people were getting paid back then. Before streaming, I bet bands were making a lot more money.
Yeah, 100%.
Selling CDs, records, tapes, everything like that, and then that's like gone to the wayside, like because
I'm guilty of this. It's coming back a little bit because like I think old heads they just like the physical copies. The thing I can't wrap my head around coming back is tapes. I think,
dude, I got like 100 tapes.
Yeah, I know, but do you have a tape player?
Yeah.
But I like, do these kids that are infatuated with these, like a lot of younger kids are tape collectors now, but like I don't get it because that's not the best sound quality in the world. You know what I mean? Like the tape's not the best sound quality, but like how do you find a tape player? And are younger kids walking around with like a Walkman or something like that, just with the headphones on?
In my case, I think tapes are fucking cool. They're compact. They're cheap.
They are.
That's what's cool about them.
I do like the aesthetic of it and the long pull-out book, and it's very nostalgic for me, obviously, because I did grow up in a time frame where tapes were still massively prevalent, right? It was CDs and tapes, but I was at the tail end of the tape legacy, and CDs were taken over.
Yeah, see, that's I think that's another thing I think just popped in my head that I think is cool about tapes, especially now. I feel like you finding a record pressing of a album that you like is way more common than finding a cassette of an album that you like.
Oh, yeah.
Especially a new one. So it's like, I feel like I get way more joy going to a record store, going to the tape wall, and I find like, what was the thing that I got? Oh, I found like a Carcass surgical steel, like original tape, in the middle of a tape wall for like $3.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, yeah. Like that feels like way more like, like I get way more excited about that. Especially like metal hardcore tapes, like they're just like fewer, hard to find. If I saw like God, the amount of like funk and soul and R&B tapes
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you just
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
have to
yeah.
shuffle through, like which like I love it. Like I'll buy like a Marvin Gaye record anytime I see it. But like, yeah, like I don't know. I love tapes, and then like tape players, you can find them at like eBay,
Oh
like
yeah,
little
they're,
home
they're
tape
super
players.
cheap. They're super cheap now, but you know, it's
Yeah,
just. And I'm not saying I don't buy tapes. I literally bought like a Horse the Band R. Borlax tape like the second it dropped, and I'm like,
sick.
in my head, I'm like, am I about to fucking start collecting tapes too? You know, because I have like
Do
hundreds
it.
of CDs and hundreds of vinyl, and like I started collecting that, and people were like making fun of me years ago. I started collecting CDs again, and now look at you, bitches! Everybody wants CDs again. So
Yeah.
it sucks because like now the CDs are getting more expensive because people are paying more attention to CDs. But it used to
Yeah.
be like you said, it was like $2-3 for a CD or a tape or something like that, and
Yeah.
you know, because vinyl was always going to be like more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think that tapes coming back is really cool in
Yeah.
my opinion.
No,
And that's
I
like
don't disagree.
that was the first physical thing that Judiciary ever sold was cassette tapes. That
Nice.
was
On the demo,
and-
the demo back in the day.
Yep.
Interesting.
And if anybody is listening to this podcast, there is one variant of physical music that I do not have of ours, and it's the demo tape with the Texas flag sticker on it. And if you have that, sell it to me for not that much money.
Yeah.
Because some guy in I think Southeast Asia tried to sell it to me for $80, and I was like, no.
That's wild though that it's out there. You're like
Yeah,
your 17-year-old self demos out there in Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia loves us, man. It's crazy. They've always been. I get a video sent to me like every couple of years or so of some new band covering Axis of Equality, and it's always
Yeah.
the coolest shit ever.
It's weird because Southeast Asia is huge for hardcore. It's so strange.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I was I had a shitty band in the early 2000s, and you know we would get like these plays from like Southeast Asia countries like Thailand and all these other like Indonesia, and I'm like, what the fuck? Who's out? You know, and they were not like massive streams or massive listens, but they were like enough for us to like notice and be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And I was thinking
Yeah.
like that's got to be like a mistake or something, you know, like some bullshit. But then you start seeing online like bands coming from there. You know, bands are putting out stuff from those Southeast Asia areas, and it's hardcore, it's metal and stuff like that. And it was kind of wild. That was like late 90s, early 2000s and stuff that I started noticing all that.
I don't know if you saw the video, but like last year, a couple months ago, I can't remember what it was. A band called Whispers. I'm not sure where they're from. I think it might be Singapore or Thailand. But if I'm wrong, forgive me. But they played a show, and again, if I'm wrong, forgive me. I want to say they played a show in Bangkok, somewhere in Southeast Asia, that was like in the middle of like a downtown city square. They just like rented out a stage and blocked off the street in front of like all these department stores, and 2,000 or 3,000 people were there, just
Wow.
pitting hard as fuck.
Wow.
Like, yeah, and it was like one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I'm
That
gonna
band,
look that up.
that band rules. By the way, if you haven't listened to Whispers, listen to them. They're like kickback, all out war kind of worship, and they're fucking awesome.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I Googled it, so I'll get back to that. One last
Yeah.
thing I want to talk to you about before we cut you loose, because we're going over an hour here, which is perfect, and it was very quick and natural. I like that, so thank you, Jake.
Of course.
The big topic of debate in the world today, I'm assuming not just our DIY hardcore metal world, but you know, probably affects other people too. Merch cuts. Has Judiciary had to deal with merch cuts, and like, do you have an opinion on that, and do you think there's an actual reasoning behind it? Because we here at Lambgoat, obviously none of us that work here currently have had to deal with merch cuts, because I was in a band, you know, and I played venues that were pretty DIY and not Live Nation owned or whatever, you know what I mean, because that was a different time. But I never personally had to deal with it, and it seemed like it was a very quiet situation. I'm not saying that they weren't around when I was around. We just didn't have to deal with it. But you know, as the conversation grows and as it becomes more public, you find out that it's been going on for quite some time. And again, not every venue is guilty of doing this currently either. So not, you know, there are other things, but are merch cuts like, and again, you may not have this happen to you specifically, but you may know, because you know other bands and other bands at different levels. When booking a tour or anything like that, are merch cuts discussed prior to, or is that something that, like, when you arrive to the venue, that's when you realize, oh, this cut at this venue is X amount and the other one is X amount and the last night's is X amount?
So the first part of that is, what is my opinion? My opinion is that it's bullshit. It's predatory behavior by a corporate entity that is just trying to gain more and more profit where they don't need it. In a way, I can understand doing that for The Weeknd and Taylor Swift and XYZ artists that, can afford.
They may have to employ multiple people to sell merch at multiple stations at, like, a venue that is, housing thousands of people, like you said, like Taylor Swift and The Weeknd. It's not like your band showing up with one guy that's selling merch or one person selling merch.
Yeah, when Taylor Swift sells 10,000 shirts in a night, go hound her merch manager for your cut. But what I don't understand about it is, because to answer your question, we have had to deal with it.
Okay.
And basically, when we've had to deal with it, it's kind of, we'll get the tour offer. We'll say, like, we see it's like, oh, we're playing X venue in X city. There's a few that we know that it's going to happen. When we confirm the tour and we get more details, like, usually, like, we'll get, like, a tour book or, like, email, like, detailing, like, addresses, what is there Wi-Fi, blah blah blah. It'll say, is there a merch cut, and it'll tell you what the cut is. So you go into it knowing what you're getting into.
So sorry, just before I forget, so does, like, your agent have to agree to that then? And I'm not trying to make them at fault. I'm just trying to fully understand, the backside of this, because this is some stuff that people don't know anything about for the most part.
Yeah, it basically, if you agree to the tour agrees to pay it. Like, okay. when the promoter / the booking agents put everything together, there's some sort of agreement somewhere between Live Nation, the Live Nation owned venues, the promoters, and the XYZ that says, like, you will pay this. Gotcha. Then when you get to the venue, they will count all your merch, and so that way at the end of the night they will count all your merch again, say, oh, you sold this much in soft goods, like t-shirts. Mm-hmm. You owe us this much.
And what's the percentage, if you want to say? Because some people have said, like, there's been 25+% in Europe now currently going on. So it's my experience that it varies. A bunch of places that we've done, it's like 15 to 20. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's like, part of you doesn't even want to sell merch. Part of you wants to be like, hey, get merch at our van.
Yeah, that's another thing that I was going to bring up. Is that something that's accessible to you guys when you're on tour? Like, can you sell it out of the van? Is that, like, a part of the venue,
See, but then you run into the problem, especially with venues. If they're in a big downtown area, you can't really park your van up front,
right,
in front of the door. If they're, maybe the venue doesn't allow in and outs. Nobody wants to, on their way out of the show, it might be too busy. They might not see you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, the alternative is, just don't sell merch at this show, which is stupid, because then it's like, well, we can't just sell nothing, because then we won't make any money off the show. Like, plus, yes, we'll get our guarantee.
It's also good that people in that area have, like, your stuff too, and it sucks. Merch cuts suck, but not selling merch, 10 people could buy a shirt, right? And then 10 people are wearing the shirt around town at some point.
Yeah. Well, and it's like this big corporate entity, and, like, Live Nation employees I don't want to say no shit, but, like, I don't think that they have context for, like, what smaller touring bands go through. on the other side, because a bunch of them are people who like maybe went to college for like event coordination and everything like that, and they see the bigger side of things. Like they're working with the Taylor Swift events and everything like that, and they're like, oh yeah, everybody can afford this. So it's like when you come to me as a 1 of 4 band on a metal package where I sold 15 shirts, and you're like, here, give me my cut. It's like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
Like, you guys just like, and then you factor into the fact that the promoter is paying them to rent out that venue, and most of them are bars or have bars. They're
so
making
getting, bar money.
It's like they're selling $7 Lone Star beer that they paid $1 a can for. It's like they're making enough money.
Yeah.
They're good, I promise. And it's like then you hear like over the news, it's like, oh, Live Nation, Ticketmaster, blah blah blah. They made $3.8 billion in gross in like net profit, and it's like, oh yeah, wonder why. It's like.
Well, all the fees too, all the fees on the fucking tickets and stuff like that that no one knows what the hell they cover, you know.
Yeah, well, and like, you know, I said like Live Nation should just go after the Taylor Swift of the world. I'm glad that bigger artists. I don't know if anything will come of it because like it's fucked up, but like we've experienced that like our government will say that they care about it and then they just don't
rule against it. Yeah, they'll rule for those fucking entities. Yeah,
because I'm sure Live Nation's hands are in a bunch of people's pockets.
Well, the Cure just tried to fucking sell tickets on their recent tour for like $20, $40 or something like that, and then I think it's Live Nation. They just like added way more fees. It was like $40 in fees. It was like almost as much for the ticket, or the fees were almost as much as the ticket, and you know they're upset about that. So.
Well, and it's like but I am glad that like Taylor Swift, the example of what I'm talking about, is taking action. She's trying to like help out these smaller artists, which is like it's crazy because like I don't know I don't know the lineage of somebody like Taylor Swift, but like I don't know how much time she spent being like a DIY musician. It's very admirable.
Not much, I'll give you that.
Exactly, but. It's very admirable of her to recognize that not everybody is in her situation.
Well, her fan base is so big, too. There's different levels of people that like her, right? There's people that like her at that make a lot of money, and there's kids, you know, and those kids have parents of all different incomes and all different lifestyles. So, yeah, and again, that's when you talk about fucking Live Nation or those big acts, there's so many fucking problems, like scalpers and bots that buy tickets up at an ungodly pace and ungodly speed that they, you know, shows sell out like that. Then you have to buy an exorbitant amount, a ticket at an exorbitant amount. So it's fucked. That's why I kind of like the underground, and it's not necessarily like that. Like, you know, shows do sell out here and there and periodically, but usually those people that are trying to sell tickets, whether it's in like a Facebook group or online, they're not trying to fuck anybody over. You know, they all understand.
Yeah. Well, and like, I see a lot of like the people who like are not on the band side or like the quote unquote like industry side of shit say like, oh, just don't pay it. It's like that when I say that when you get there and they present you something, it's an agreement that you won't fuck up the venue, you won't do XYZ, B and C. Line Z.165 is that you will pay this merch cut.
Yeah.
So if you don't pay the merch cut, depending on how extra they're feeling that day, they can come after you legally.
Yeah.
And if you want, you know, Judiciary versus Live Nation, like in a court of law, it's like Judiciary's getting hosed every time.
For sure, yeah. Not even making it to the courtroom, dude.
And so it's like a bunch of these smaller bands are left in like a really stupid fucking position.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, that's just how it is, man.
I feel you on that. I told you I lied. That's not the last question I want to ask. I want to bring up another topic since you are in a pretty heavy band and your Texas people are somewhat wild. Let's bring up moshing and like all that cool stuff because you have, like I said, violent shows and stuff like that, violent music. Have you noticed, and again, you may not notice this, it's something that was brought up on the Hard Lore podcast by Jay and everything, and those boys are definitely, you know, Colin and Bo are definitely into the moshing, and that's all cool. I mean, I'm into it as well. But I agree with Jay that moshing has definitely changed. From the time when I was a kid, there was only like one or two crazy people doing the wild, crazy moshing, and now it's like everybody. And everyone's just beating the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, I think it was so. Like I'm younger than those dudes because so I wasn't around, and I'm from fucking Lubbock.
Yeah, an area where it's not as you know aggregate.
We didn't have a crazy mosher with face tattoos that was beating the shit out of kids, and you just didn't fucking mess with him because he might stab you.
He's wild. He looks crazy.
Yeah, we didn't have those guys. So like But what I've experienced is that the culture is it's cool because it's like everybody's pretty on the same page of like, yeah, you might get a roundhouse to the face, but you better look cool when you go back in there.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like,
I think it shocks like the outside world because like we're so used to it, right? We're used to it, and we know that there's an understanding, and it just and I'm not complaining about it obviously because I love everything about hardcore and metal enough to where like and again I've been around it forever. I prefer like the ninja fighting to the push mosh and that kind of stuff. So I like it all. I'm not a fan of when I get fucking crowd killed or fucking bonked in the head, but it happens all the time. And I probably shouldn't be at my age in the area where all that's going down, but it is what it is. But I do think that when people outside of the world, outside of our world, watch it because you'll see that pop off on like other Instagram accounts or Twitter or Facebook groups and accounts and stuff like that. Yeah, normies are just, and I hate saying normies, but people outside of the scene, they see this shit and they're like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? It's fucking violent. But it's not to us, you know, it's just everyone's having a great time.
Well, that's what's funny is you mentioned that like moshing, Texas, wild, whatever. There's a clip that went viral of the Mind Force set at FYA, and there's a guy from Dallas that is doing these crazy fucking roundhouse kicks just over and over and over again in one spot. He's just spinning like a fan, and this girl is trying to weave her way. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He fucking.
But she shouldn't have been there in general. I don't know what she was doing walking through that.
See, this is my advice for people who are just getting in. There is an art form to not getting hit just as much as there is an art form to throwing hits.
Yeah.
Like, cover up, be aware of your surroundings, and if you're not ready to be in there, don't be in there.
Yeah, keep your head on a swivel. You gotta, and even then, dude, it's a minefield. You know what I'm saying? It's a minefield. And
yeah.
The other thing, I was talking to an older head of guy locally here, and he's been booking shows for 30, 40 years almost. I don't know, but he's been doing it for a while. And we were talking about this specific topic a couple weeks ago, and he was saying, you know, back in the day, that it was still going on, right? People were still moshing the same way. It just the crowd was you didn't have as much room, and so you were very limited. Whereas now, like you watch like This Is Hardcore or FYA, and like it's just a fucking horseshoe, and like you know, there's like so much room in the middle. It's like a vacant space, and then people just go out there, and then they have the ability to do the more wild, crazy shit. And then, you know, the running back and forth and fucking hitting people and shit, and just running around the stage and just clobbering people. Like, part of me thinks like if that space wasn't as available, it wouldn't look as horrible. But again, it also looks cool, and it's part of the fucking culture. So it's a give or take, you know. And like you said, you have to have your wits about you, and there is an art to it, and it's a wild battlefield full of minds. You just gotta fucking watch where you step.
Yeah, I think that like the room thing, it does allow for people to do way crazier shit.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But the room thing also gives you way more room to
get away. Get
away. Like,
but there's no reason you should be going from one side to the other. There's not, you know what I mean? Like, if you're in the back, there's no reason to go to the front because that's like one of the worst places to be is like in front of the pit without your being because you're looking back all the time because you're in danger. That's a danger zone. There are people,
Yeah.
usually big dudes that don't fucking give a shit, but there's people up there screaming the lyrics and doing all this, that, or the other. But yeah, why would that girl walk through? You know what I mean? Like, what was her logic?
I think it's because a lot of people really got into hardcore over the past few years and found it, and which is awesome because, like you said, when it seeps into the mainstream, there's people who will see that video of dude from Dallas doing roundhouses like crazy, and there's two types of people. They'll be like, "What the fuck is that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like, what fucking morons!" Like, and then there's the other person that is wide-eyed and they go, "Holy shit, what the fuck is that?"
I like this chaos.
And then, yeah, exactly. Which is like how I got into it. I got into it by watching Sound and Fury videos from like 2011.
Oh man!
And I was like, "This is awesome. I need to. This is the kind of like because I was already going to metal shows, but I was like, oh my god, these guys look crazy." I had this show.
I had bad FOMO last year's Sound and Fury. All the videos coming out from Sound and Fury last year, it was like, fuck, dude. This was like the year to probably go. But yeah, we just slept on it. It was so bad.
The speed set, the picture of Nate or Brody fucking stage diving.
Dude, it's fucking wild, man. That's an iconic image. That's like an iconic image now for hardcore. It's just like that dude just fucking top rope diving off into the crowd, just clobbering everybody.
Yeah, he's like 280 pounds.
He's a professional wrestler, dude. Yeah, I mean, like, it's crazy.
But that's one thing is like I think that people like when they find the thing and then they're like, oh yeah, they think they're going to be protected because I feel like there's a culture in other genres where it's like, oh, don't get too close to me, like we're in here, but like when it's with hardcore, it's like we're all on the same page that we might get knocked out, but we're here for it. So you better be on the same page too. And some people just don't realize that till they're on the ground.
Yeah, you can stay in the back if you aren't about it. Yeah,
exactly. So like it takes. I'm sure like that girl probably went like, oh okay, yeah, well,
not going back to that, not doing that again.
Yeah, but she'll probably go back to a show and she'll be like, yeah,
she'll be better about it.
And she'll tell that story. Mind Force FYA 2019. I got a roundhouse in the face, and I was just like, yeah.
She'll be like, I was that girl that you probably saw all over the internet.
And at the very least, I've heard people like I have friends of mine that are just like, yeah, I don't mosh, but like just because I don't want to get hit, but like I'll stage dive. Stage dive.
Oh yeah. I'm more of that
Something
guy.
for everybody.
Yeah, I'm more of that guy. I'm more of the guy that's also like running from the back of the pit to the front to jump on people to get up and like try to fucking. Grab the singer or the microphone or something like that. So I'm more into that stuff at this particular point. But yeah, I mean, I was doing moshing when we didn't have enough room, so it was a lot of like two-stepping and like not swinging a bunch of fists all the time. But yeah.
See, I'm the dickhead. I'm the dickhead 240-pound mosher. I'm sorry, everybody.
Just banging the sidewalls, just clobbering the sides.
Exactly.
Well, Jake, I appreciate your time, man. And for those who have not listened to Flesh and Blood, definitely go check it out on Closed Casket Activities today. Anything you want to leave off with, or?
Thank you to everybody who's listened to the record so far. If you haven't checked it out, it's everywhere you can get music. You can stream it. You can order merch. You can see our shows over at judiciarytx.com. I'm sorry, our name is very hard to spell.
All the links are in the description too. So if you're feeling it, go check it out. All the links are there too.
There you go, Lambgoat looking out. User anonymous at Lambgoat, you are the enemy. But
he's, they've made that person's made the most comments of all time on Lambgoat.
They are so active, it's crazy. No, I'm just kidding. But user anonymous is also fucking hilarious sometimes. So we
like it when bands understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bands understand it, and I think bands love those comments. And I think the readers and the people who are not really used to Lambgoat or new to Lambgoat, they have issues with it. Some bands have issues with it too, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's all good. I said leading up to this record, because we never got a full good Lambgoat roasting. This was the first one we've gotten somebody called us fat fuck Lamb of God. That was one of my favorite Lambgoat comments ever.
That's a reference to Lamb of God. What's bad about that? You're
yeah,
fat.
exactly. But we got a full Lambgoat roasting, so that means we're doing something right.
Yeah,
so, like,
it's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And I'm
Exactly.
sure if you get a Vanflip comment on your band, that's a badge of honor. It's it's take those lumps and keep moving, man. If no one commented on your article, that's even worse, man.
Yeah. But yeah, Lambgoat, user anonymous, fuck you. But also love you. And yeah, if you want to check us out, we'll be around. Flesh and Blood is out, so we got to play some shows.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see you out there on the road in the summer, hopefully. Once you
Sounds
announce
good.
everything, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Jake. Have a good time, man. Take it easy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.